The recording didn't come from a courtroom. It didn't come from an interview or a documentary team or a reporter who managed to slip a question through prison glass. It came from a place he never thought the public would hear. A routine phone call. The kind inmates make every day. Except this one didn't stay inside the prison walls. Someone saved it. Someone leaked it. And when people pressed play, they didn't hear the confident, calm, neatly presented version of him that the world remembered from those early interviews. They heard something different. A voice cracking under the weight of a reality he could never escape. Before that phone call surfaced, most people believed Chris Watts had settled into the rhythm of his life sentence. Same cell. Same schedule. Same face. Day after day. A man locked away forever, out of sight, out of mind. But the call changed that. For the first time, the world heard what staying alive inside those walls was actually doing to him. No dramatics. No excuses. Just a quiet moment where his mask slipped. He didn't know it was recording. He didn't know it would end up online. And he definitely didn't know that the moment he whispered, "I want to get out of here," people across the country would freeze in their tracks. Because he wasn't talking about release. Not legally. He knew that door was locked forever. He was talking about something else. Something darker. Something that felt like a punishment worse than death. Before we continue, if you like deep dive storytelling like this, go ahead and hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe. It helps more people find these kinds of cases, and it lets me keep bringing you stories that go beneath the surface. The truth is, his sentence wasn't designed to end him. It was designed to keep him breathing. Some people believe that was deliberate. The court wasn't trying to give him an ending. It was trying to give him a lifetime of quiet, slow consequences. Not the sharp shock of a single moment, but the never-ending echo of every decision he made. And inside his cell, far from the cameras, that echo eventually caught up with him. The leaked call begins normally. Small talk. A tired voice. You can hear him trying to sound steady, like someone trying to pretend everything is fine while their hands are shaking out of frame. And then, without warning, he slips. He talks about the days blending together. He talks about the silence that pulls at him. He talks about nights that feel longer than they should. He says he's not sure how much more he can do. That's when the call gets quiet. The kind of quiet where you can almost hear his thoughts. This wasn't the Chris Watts people remembered from the news. Not the man standing casually on his porch giving interviews. Not the man speaking in flat, careful sentences. This was someone unraveling mid-sentence. Someone trying to explain a feeling he couldn't fully say aloud. Someone who realized the rest of his life would look exactly like the last 6 years. No changes. No milestones. Just repetition. And at some point, repetition becomes its own kind of punishment. For a lot of viewers, the call wasn't surprising. They assumed a man living in near total isolation would eventually crack. But hearing it, hearing his voice sink, hearing that little break in his throat, made it real. It took him off the idea of monster in a documentary, and showed him as a human being deteriorating slowly in the background of a world that moved on without him. And that's exactly why the clip went viral. Because it offered something people had secretly wondered: what does a lifetime sentence feel like 6 years in, when the cameras are gone, the attention has faded, and reality becomes permanent? He didn't describe violence or danger behind bars. He didn't mention other inmates or prison hierarchy. The struggle he talked about was more psychological. The quiet. The sameness. The hours that refused to pass. The feeling of being surrounded by people while still being completely alone. He said he thinks too much. He said he remembers too much. He said he dreams too much. The kind of dreams that don't let you wake up clean. And when he said, "I just want out," his voice softened in a way people weren't expecting. Not rage. Not fear. Just exhaustion. Whether someone feels sympathy or disgust doesn't matter. The emotional drop in his voice is undeniable. And the virality came from that contrast, seeing a man who once tried to convince the world he was strong, calm, collected, suddenly hanging on by a thread. It created conversation. Arguments. Debates. Some people said the call proved he's finally facing the full weight of what he did. Others said it sounded manipulative. Some said it was the most honest moment he's ever had. And some said it didn't matter either way. But the reason this moment hit so hard is simple: it showed the kind of punishment you can't see. Not a courtroom. Not a sentence announced by a judge. Not a prison documentary. It showed the private version of a life sentence. The version where the inmate isn't performing, isn't being filmed, isn't being interviewed. Just a man, a phone, and the crushing awareness that he will wake up in the same place tomorrow, and the next day, and every day after that. The call continues in pieces. He talks about the cold. The routine. The sound of the metal door shutting at night. He says he spends more time thinking than talking. He says he doesn't know what month it is sometimes. There's a point where he apologizes, not to anyone specific, just into the phone, like an instinct. Like he forgot where he was for a second and slipped back into a version of himself that used to say sorry all the time. That part made a lot of people uncomfortable. Not because of the apology, but because it sounded almost automatic, like he wasn't sure who he was talking to or why he said it. The call ends awkwardly. He tells the person on the other line he'll call again, when it's quieter. He sounds tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone who has been walking in circles for years and just noticed the path is wearing thin under his feet. When the audio cuts off, there's no closing message, no beep, no explanation. Just silence. And maybe that's what makes it so haunting. Because the silence feels like part of the punishment too. After the leak, social media caught fire. Clips popped up everywhere. People stitched it, analyzed it, slowed it down, added captions, broke it apart frame by frame. And the more people listened, the more the same questions started appearing in comment sections. Is this what a real-life sentence looks like? Not the beginning when everything is new and shocking. Not the trial when emotions run high. But the long, quiet middle. The part that stretches on for decades. The part nobody sees. In a way, the call became its own form of justice. Not because people felt compassion. Not because people felt anger. But because it forced the world to look at what life without parole actually means in practice. Not execution. Not headlines. Just a slow unraveling inside a small room, one day at a time. A punishment that doesn't end, doesn't evolve, doesn't fade. A punishment that stays alive. And the question that comes out of all this, the one that keeps people listening, isn't about guilt or innocence. It isn't even about remorse. It's this: what happens to someone when their entire world shrinks down to a 6x8 box and they have nothing left to perform for? What does a person sound like when the only audience is themselves? For Chris Watts, the answer came through in a single leaked phone call. And the world wasn't ready for how human that moment sounded, or how unsettling that humanity could be. You would think that after 2 years inside, Chris would have adjusted to the silence. But the silence in there isn't normal silence. It's the kind that gets into your lungs, the kind that feels like you're inhaling emptiness instead of air. Every sound echoes: footsteps, a metal cart, a door far away slamming shut. It all hits you like reminders that no one is coming for you. No one is calling your name. And you have nowhere else to go. In the outside world, people imagine prison as loud, chaotic, violent. And sure, parts of it are. But what really gets to him isn't noise. It's the quiet. The hours of nothing. The clock hands crawling like they're stuck in glue. The same routine repeating over and over until even the guards stop looking at you like a person and start seeing you as another part of the building. He wakes up at 5 a.m. every day because the lights come on whether you're sleeping or not. He tries not to think about what mornings used to look like. He tries not to hear old memories in the back of his head, kids laughing, a familiar voice telling him to hurry up, breakfast sounds, real sounds. The human kind. But memory is the one visitor they can't keep out. The guards say he keeps his routine the way someone clings to a raft, meticulously, exactly the same in every detail. Wake up. Shower. Fold the blanket so tightly it looks like no one slept under it. Sit on the edge of the bed. Stare at the floor. Repeat. Day in, day out. The same motions, the same order, the same blank stare. As if changing anything, even a tiny step, might unravel whatever thin strand of sanity he still has holding him together. The inmates around him don't talk to him. Not really. Some whisper things, some stare, some avoid him like he carries a disease. A few say worse things, things he hears through the thin walls at night. One guy down the hall makes a point of yelling at him every time they pass, but Chris doesn't respond. He keeps his eyes forward, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. The guards say he's never snapped, not once. He just absorbs it like a sponge, like he thinks he deserves it. Maybe he does think that. There's a specific chair in the common area he always sits in, back corner, closest to the wall, farthest from everyone else. He reads, or pretends to. Sometimes the pages don't turn for 10 straight minutes. Sometimes longer. Not because he's concentrating, but because his mind isn't even inside the book. It's somewhere else entirely. He avoids eye contact like it hurts. The only time he looks up is when a guard walks by, and even then it's quick, tense, like an animal checking for threat. They say that when he first arrived, he tried smiling at people. The kind of automatic polite smile you give without thinking. But after a few weeks, that stopped. Now his face is a blank wall. Expressionless. Like something's been turned off, not temporarily, but permanently. The chaplain visits him sometimes. Not because Chris asks, but because the chaplain says he needs it. He'll sit down across from him and ask how he's doing. The answer is always the same. I'm all right. 2 words. Flat. Hollow. Almost rehearsed. No specifics, no emotion, no real communication. Just, all right. Except everyone knows he isn't. He doesn't sleep well. The guards notice because he's awake at 2 a.m., sitting on the floor, elbows on his knees, staring at the corner of his cell like he's waiting for something to move. Sometimes, he whispers to himself. Sometimes he prays. Sometimes he just stares, motionless, until the lights come back on and he pretends he'd been asleep the whole time. There are nightmares. They don't know what they're about, he never says, but they know they're there. There's a moment, maybe once every few weeks, when the night watch hears him let out a sharp breath, like he just came up for air after drowning. There's no crying, no yelling, just that one sound, short and panicked, and then silence again. He eats every meal, but barely. Just enough to keep going. His appetite changed in the first year. Food used to be a comfort. Not anymore. Now meals feel like checkpoints. One more step through the day. One more minute gone. One more reminder he's still here. Time is strange for him. Days blur. Months disappear. The seasons change only because the air feels different through the cracks around the windows. Snow, rain, summer heat, he doesn't see them directly, he just feels the building react to them. The world keeps moving without him. That might be the part that hurts the most. Every now and then, a guard finds him looking at the bulletin board in the hallway, random old posters, outdated notices, a faded calendar from last year. He stands there like someone looking at photographs of a life he doesn't belong to anymore. The guards don't rush him. They just walk by, letting him stare. If life outside was color, his life now is grayscale. He writes letters sometimes. They rarely get mailed. He folds them, stares at them for a long time, then tears them up. Not angrily, slowly, carefully, like he's removing evidence of something shameful. The pieces go into the toilet. He flushes them away without looking. The prison psychologist says he lives in a kind of internal lockdown. Not imposed by the facility, but self-imposed. A mental cell inside the physical one. He doesn't try to make friends. He doesn't ask for anything. He doesn't complain. He just exists. Survival mode. The guards notice how he reacts to certain sounds. A child's voice on a visiting day. A woman laughing down the corridor. A commercial on a TV in the distance with a happy family in it. His shoulders tense, his breathing changes, his eyes dart for a second. He doesn't break, not outwardly. But something shifts in his face. Something tightens. And then he goes still again. Back to the blank stare. Back to pretending nothing affects him. Isolation does something to the mind. It takes the parts of you that used to feel normal, joy, frustration, curiosity, and puts them behind glass. You can see them, but you can't touch them. Months turn into years, and eventually, you start forgetting how those parts ever felt. Some inmates say they hear him humming sometimes. A tune from somewhere long ago, maybe a song he used to hear in the car or at home. But the humming never lasts long. He always stops abruptly, as if remembering where he is, as if realizing even a small moment of comfort feels forbidden. There's a weight that follows him around. You can't see it, but you can feel it in the way he moves. Slow steps. Shoulders drawn in. Hands always kept close, never expressive. Like he's trying to take up as little space as possible. And then there's the thing the guards don't talk about officially, but everyone knows. He's afraid. Not constantly. Not in a trembling, dramatic way. But in a quiet, persistent, bone-deep way. The kind of fear that doesn't show on your face but lives behind your eyes. Fear of other inmates. Fear of time. Fear of memory. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of never feeling like a human being again. And maybe the biggest fear of all. Fear of himself. Fear of who he was. Fear of who he still might be. Because the walls don't just hold him in place. They hold everything he did, every mistake, every consequence, every version of himself he can't run from. People think prison is about bars, locks, guards, rules. But really, it's about mirrors. And the problem is, he can't look away from this one. There is a moment people still talk about from the courtroom, a moment that has echoed inside that prison cell with him ever since. It was when the judge looked directly at him, really looked at him, and explained why he would not be facing the death penalty. The judge's voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was controlled, deliberate, almost calm. But that calm made the words hit harder. The judge said something that has followed Chris like a shadow. Death would be the easy way out. He didn't flinch when he heard it. He didn't react. But everyone in the courtroom felt the weight of those words. The judge wasn't sparing him. He was sentencing him to something deeper, something slower, something he would have to live inside of every single day for the rest of his natural life. Because death is a moment. But life in prison is a lifetime of remembering. The judge said it plainly, without any dramatic tone. He explained that execution ends a story. But life in prison forces a person to sit with every detail of what they've done. No escape. No final silence. Just endless time, the kind that stretches out like a hallway with no door at the end. He even said that the quiet hours, the ones no one else sees, would become the real punishment. The nights where there's nothing to distract him from the memory of each choice, each action, each consequence. The judge described it as a sentence of reflection, a punishment in which the mind becomes the prison within the prison. Standing there that day, Chris didn't lift his eyes. He listened. He heard every word. But something in him wilted. Not visibly, but internally, like a small collapse that only he could feel. He knew what the judge meant. He knew that living with the memories would be its own kind of slow-burning cage. And that prediction has come true in ways most people outside those walls will never fully understand. There are moments, small, quick moments, that hit him unexpectedly. A certain echo of a guard's radio. A child's voice drifting from the visitation room. A commercial jingle on the TV in the common area. He hears these things and his breath catches for half a second. That catch, that small break, is the punishment the judge was talking about. The part no one can see unless they're paying close attention. In the courtroom, the judge also talked about responsibility. He said something like, "You must spend every day understanding the full impact of your choices." It wasn't about suffering for the sake of suffering. It was about a kind of forced confrontation, one that doesn't end with a lethal injection. One that continues in the silence of a cell, in the lonely routines, in every second where there is nothing to distract the mind. People think prison dulls emotion. Maybe for some inmates it does. But for him, it sharpens certain memories instead. There are nights where the quiet presses in so tightly it feels like the walls might start whispering. There are mornings where waking up isn't a fresh start, but a reminder. The judge said life would be harder than death. And in prison, life shrinks. It condenses. It folds in on itself until the smallest details become the biggest burdens. A scraped tray sliding across a table. A guard calling out his inmate number. The thump of boots in the hallway. Each of these things becomes a metronome, ticking out the same message again and again. You're not getting out. You're not going anywhere. You have to sit with this. Every day. Forever. The judge said he would not be allowed to forget. And the prison environment makes sure of that. Even in moments where he tries to disappear into routine, a guard will call his name for count. Or another inmate will shout something cruel down the hall. Or he'll catch his reflection in the metal door and see someone he doesn't fully recognize. The judge's prophecy lives in all those moments. The punishment is survival. The punishment is remembering. There's another part of the judge's speech that has stayed with him. Observers said his shoulders tightened the moment he heard it. The judge said, "True justice will not be delivered by ending your life, but by having you live every day with the knowledge of what you took from the world." That sentence didn't end in the courtroom. It followed him through intake processing. Through the gates. Through the first night in his cell. Through every year since. And the truth is, the judge's words hit harder now than they did back then. Because back then, everything was happening fast. Lawyers, cameras, reporters. The shock of consequences landing all at once. But in prison, consequences don't land fast. They land slowly, drip by drip, day after day. And the slowness is exactly the punishment the judge intended. Sometimes the guards see him sitting on the floor with his back against the concrete wall, staring upward. They say it looks like someone trying to make sense of a ceiling as if it were a sky. As if something beyond the bricks might understand him better than the people inside the building. One guard who worked the night shift said something quietly, off the record. Some inmates break in violence. What's breaks in silence? Meaning he doesn't lash out. He doesn't yell. He doesn't cause trouble. His breaking happens privately, internally, in the quiet hours where no one can intervene. And the judge predicted that, too. He said that the worst punishment is a punishment the inmate can't outrun, even in their own mind. The inmates around him keep their distance. Not out of respect, but out of disgust, or anger, or both. They mutter things. They say things loud enough for him to hear, but not loud enough for the guards to intervene. Some threats are real. Some are just words meant to scare him. But either way, he hears every syllable. And every one of those syllables is a reminder of who he is in here. Not a person. Not even a name. A symbol. A target. A warning. The judge knew that too. He knew isolation inside a crowded place is its own kind of torment. But the hardest part, the part people don't see unless they understand how prisons operate, is the emptiness. The lack of future. The lack of next steps. The lack of improvement. In the outside world, people grow, change, reinvent themselves. In prison, especially under a life without parole sentence, time doesn't build. It erases. He has no milestones ahead. No forced countdown toward execution. No preparation for a final moment. Instead, his punishment stretches endlessly. A sentence without a period. That's why the judge's words echo so deeply. Death would end your suffering. Life means you must carry it. Every day, every night, the sentence repeats itself in one form or another. Lights on. Lights off. Meals. Counts. Silence. Memories. And beneath all of that, the quiet truth of the judge's decision, the punishment was designed to last a lifetime, not a second. Inside that concrete box, time itself becomes the warden. And the judge knew that too. He didn't sentence Chris to death. He sentenced him to live. If you ask the people who work in that prison what they think his future looks like, they all say the same thing, more of the same. More silence. More routine. More years blending into each other until the calendar stops mattering. He'll age there. He'll gray there. He'll die there. Not in an execution chamber with an audience or a headline, but quietly, anonymously, at the end of a life that became smaller and smaller with every passing year. And maybe that's exactly what the judge foresaw. The world outside has moved on from him. News cycles changed. People focused on new cases, new disasters, new conversations. He isn't trending anymore. He isn't a name people whisper every day. Even the outrage has cooled. That's part of the punishment too, becoming irrelevant. In the beginning, the world talked about him constantly. His face was on every screen. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone felt something. Now, the world barely says his name. He once mattered in the worst way possible. Now he barely matters at all. Inside, holidays don't feel like holidays. Birthdays don't feel like birthdays. Days have no labels, just numbers. He marks time the way someone counts steps in a dark room. Blindly. Mechanically. Without any connection to what the numbers even mean. The guards say he rarely talks about the outside world, but he listens closely whenever someone else mentions it. He doesn't join the conversation, he just absorbs it. Little details like traffic, the weather, a movie someone's kid liked. Things that feel normal, things that belong to real life, things he cannot touch anymore. Sometimes he asks the guards what day of the week it is. That's the closest he gets to small talk. The question isn't because he cares about the day. It's because the days have become so interchangeable he needs someone else to tell him where he is in the week. Otherwise, time feels circular. Endless. Unanchored. There's a medical unit not far from his tier, and sometimes he sees older inmates going in and out, men in their 70s, 80s, walking slowly, hunched, gray. Men who entered the system decades ago and have spent more years inside than outside. When he looks at them, he's not imagining something abstract. He's looking at his own future, step by step, year by year. He knows exactly what he'll look like 20 years from now. 30 years. 40. He knows he'll never walk into a grocery store again, never sit in a car, never open a window in a real house, never see a sunset without bars interrupting the sky. He knows there will never be a phone call telling him he's being transferred home. Never a parole hearing. Never a reduction in sentence. Nothing that creates even the illusion of possibility. And that's when the judge's words echo the loudest, late at night, when the other inmates are quiet, when the building creaks, when the hum of the lights feels louder than his own heartbeat. That's when he truly understands the meaning of life as a sentence, not as a privilege. Sometimes, during routine checks, the guards see him sitting on his bunk with his hands clasped, eyes closed. Not sleeping. Not praying. Just sitting. They don't ask what he's thinking. They don't need to. They know exactly what lives in that quiet. He doesn't ask for updates from the outside. People who used to write to him don't anymore. The letters stopped. Maybe they ran out of things to say. Maybe life kept moving without him. Maybe staying connected to someone who isn't coming back feels like pressing pause on your own life. And he can tell the absence of letters isn't temporary. It's permanent. Another part of the world slipping away. His connection to the outside is shrinking year after year, like a rope fraying thread by thread. Eventually, it will snap completely. Maybe it already has. He gets 1 hour of recreation when the weather allows it. It's not a yard, more like a concrete box with a high, barred ceiling that lets in a thin slice of sky. The first time he stepped into it, he looked straight up. Not at anything specific. Just at the color. The sky is something people forget to appreciate until they lose it. He stands there sometimes, just staring. Not moving. Not speaking. Just looking at something that's so close, but forever out of reach. One guard said he stands under that opening like someone trying to warm themselves in a sunbeam that barely reaches the floor. He takes deep breaths out there, slower than usual. Like the air outside the cell tastes different. Fresher. Almost like a memory. But after 60 minutes, the door opens, and he goes back inside. Back into the concrete. Back into the echoing quiet. Back into the sentence the judge crafted with intention. People imagine that someone serving life without parole eventually accepts it. That they settle into it. But acceptance isn't the right word. It's more like resignation. A long, heavy exhale that never fully clears the lungs. The truth is, he hasn't accepted it. He's endured it. There's a difference. Acceptance has peace in it. Endurance doesn't. Endurance is gritting your teeth through another day. Endurance is making peace with repetition, not reality. Endurance is waking up each morning and realizing nothing has changed, and nothing ever will. The judge knew that a lifetime of endurance would be far more punishing than a sudden end. The death penalty draws a line. Life without parole erases the horizon. There's no choice he can make that changes the outcome. No good behavior reward that leads to freedom. No milestone to aim for. Everything ahead of him is the same as everything behind him. He is stuck in the loop the judge placed him in, a life measured not in hope, but in years survived. Occasionally, new inmates arrive and recognize him. They stare for a long time, trying to confirm what they already know. Some approach him with curiosity, others with hostility. Most just watch him from a distance, whispering to each other. He doesn't respond. He's learned not to. Attention inside those walls is rarely a good thing. The psychologist who checks on him says he lives in a constant state of internal recoil. Not visible panic, not fear you can hear or see, but a shrinking inward. Like he's trying to fold himself away from the world, away from the memories, away from the things he can't outrun. He doesn't ask for pity. He doesn't ask for help. He doesn't ask for anything. Because he knows none of it matters. He will die in that building, and he knows it. And knowing it is part of the punishment. Every inmate has a moment when they realize their sentence is real. For him, that moment didn't happen in the courtroom. It didn't happen when the judge spoke. It didn't even happen when the sentence was read out loud. It happened months later, in the middle of a backbreaking routine day, when he walked into his cell, sat on the edge of the bunk, and realized nothing would ever change again. That this room wasn't temporary. That this bed wasn't temporary. That this life wasn't temporary. That was the moment the sentence truly landed. The world will never hear that moment. There's no audio clip of it. No leaked recording. No paperwork describing it. Just a man, alone in a cell, finally understanding the full meaning of life. Not life as freedom. Not life as experience. Not life as hope. Life as punishment. Life as permanence. Life as the thing the judge chose instead of death. And in the end, that's the truth people overlook. Death is final. Sudden. Over. But life inside that cell? That is the sentence that never ends. If this series pulled you in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It genuinely supports the channel and helps more people discover these stories. Thanks for being here, and for listening all the way through.